Shalom and welcome to Secrets Revealed, the Holy Bible. Today we're looking at Leviticus chapter 15. And as you can see, just like the thumbnail, we have a picture of a woman sick of her flowers. So, what does that even mean? And is it true? So, let's just minimize this and get into the content. There are 33 verses in this chapter. Beginning in verse 2, we see the first difference here. And just before I begin, I want to just state the mission of this channel is to compare and contrast the Masoretic text, which is the translation which 99% of all Bible translations come from, the Masoretic text translation, or the Masoretic text, which is in Hebrew, which is the modern Hebrew, versus the Septuagint version of the Old Testament, or the Tanakh, basically the Hebrew scriptures, and that was written in Greek. It was translated from the original Hebrew into the Greek, and it predates the Masoretic text by hundreds of years. It came before Yeshua came to this earth, and then the Masoretic text came after Yeshua had been resurrected hundreds of years later. So you can see there are stark differences, and the reason I'm going through these is because there are vast differences between both, and the goal of this channel is to look and focus and reveal these hidden truths that a lot of people frankly don't know. And every time we find something that is like a big difference, a huge difference, it's like finding gold. Actually, even more precious than gold, because gold can only it's only nice to look at, can buy you things, but this is the living word of God, and it lasts to eternity and is profitable to eternity. So that's the goal of this channel, is to compare and contrast the Masoretic text and the Septuagint, and we're looking for big differences. We're looking at all differences, but focusing on the big ones, and whether there are doctrinal differences that are so major that the religion will just go into such big paths. There are great divides between what the Masoretic text is saying versus the Septuagint, and pretty much you have two very different books, and you will wind up with two very different doctrines and ways of life. If you go exactly to the letter of what each text is saying. And of note, I don't want to make this too much about the history of the Septuagint, but anyway, I'm doing the intro, is that the only churches, at least to my knowledge, that do not use the Masoretic text is there are three that I know of: the Ethiopian Christians, the Egyptian, the Coptic Egyptians, and the Greek Orthodox Church, obviously because Septuagint is in Greek, but that's significant to know. So I believe all three groups do not acknowledge the authority of the papacy. So that's significant. Anyhow, we're going to continue with the study, and let's get into it now. Finally, verse 2, we see the word body versus flesh. Now, that's not a big difference, just again, just different terminology, saying the same thing basically. But here's a significant difference right here is, and let me just note it here. I'm going to put here SD for significant difference. And so what this difference is in the Sept, we call the Septuagint the Sept for short, and the Masoretic Mas for short, just to save time and spit. But his issue is unclean, which means could be his semen, whatever this issue is. That is the one that's unclean. It's not him. Whereas the Maz is saying, no, he is unclean. the person himself is unclean. Not, it's very it's more specific in the Maz, the Sept rather. Verse 3, see gonorrhea is the first time I'm actually using the zoom feature, not the software. I mean the actual zooming in to the screen. Whereas before I was using the magnifier for the longest time. I think this is way more uh, easier to follow. It's more user friendly and just more intuitive for me and for you. So I hope you appreciate the improvements that you're seeing today. Let me just move this around a bit there and just expand that. Okay. So again, gonorrhea, whoever has a gonorrhea out of his body versus his flesh run. So that's a, as we know, gonorrhea is like a medical condition, a pathology, and flesh running. Well, that's a difference there. It's not exactly the same. I believe gonorrhea is a venereal disease. And then we see here his body is affected versus his flesh is stopped. His flesh be stopped from his issue. Okay. And then all the days of the issue of his body by which his body is affected through the issue or the exudate, medical terminology, there is his uncleanness. So throughout that time where that issue is coming out, then he's unclean. That's basically what it's saying. Uh, Notice this is completely omitted from the Maz. Doesn't say that at all. Moving on uh, to actually the big question in verse 3. What is this issue? What is it? Is it blood? Is it semen? Is it pus? Is it serous fluid? Is it bile? Because bile is what comes out from gonorrhea. So we're not exactly sure here. Could be all of them. Could be all of the above. So this is speculation. It's hard to say for certain what it is. Now, verse 4, this is similar to the woman on period. Uh, so let's read it. Every bed on which he that has the issue shall happen to lie. So this is talking about the man who has the issue is unclean. Every seat on which he that has the issue may happen to sit shall be unclean. So recall the command, the law regarding the woman who is on her period. This is very much uh, very similar language, and this isn't talking about a woman. It's talking about a man who has an issue. So it's not. Let's get this out of our heads that the Torah, the law of God, the Tanakh, that it's sexist. It isn't. This applies to both genders. So that's a very important point. Okay, moving on to verse 9, we see, let's just look at the context. Every ass's saddle on which the man with the issue shall have mounted. So that has been omitted. The word asses, the donkey's saddle. So it's very specific to even the animal in the sept. You can appreciate that. Verse 11, he that has the issue, let's just move down there. He that has the issue shall touch whomsoever he who has the issue shall touch, versus whomsoever he touches that has the issue. Uh, okay, I'm trying to make sense of this. Let me read it slower. So if the man who has this exudate, whoever he touches shall become unclean. So that's pretty straightforward. So if I'm unclean, I touch something, it becomes unclean. I touch this, I touch you, you become unclean. But the Maz is saying whoever he touches. So if you have a person, let's just say a guy walking down the street, he comes here and he touches someone who has the issue, he becomes unclean. So It's rather similar, but you can see that the responsibility is more on the person affected than a random stranger. So it's saying whomsoever he touches, whomsoever he touches that has the issue. So it sounds a little confusing to me in the Maz, but again, it's focusing on whomsoever instead of the person who has the issue. It's saying that it's not him who has the issue, it's someone else he touches that has the issue. So again, just very can be confusing if you read it too much. If you keep repeating in your head, it sounds confusing. That's why it's important to just break it down and simplify it. Okay. Verse 12, and shall be clean. So it's saying the earthen vessel, etc., and a wooden vessel shall be washed with water and shall be clean. So it's going to be clean after you wash it with water, specifically talking about the item in verse 12, the earthen vessel. Oh, wooden vessel. The wooden vessel shall be clean. That has been omitted. It's not there. That it will be clean. You just rinse it, doesn't say it's clean. Verse 16, we see here seed of copulation. Uh, the man whose seed of copulation, semen, shall happen to go forth from him, shall then wash his whole body, and shall be unclean until evening. So this could be, uh, having sex, a man reaching orgasm, whether awake or asleep. I think it would apply to both. It doesn't say if he's awake or asleep. It just simply says if you have it, if it shall happen to go forth, whether willingly or unwillingly, through what is that? The wet dreams, nocturnal emission, and he's going to be clean, washed and clean in the evening. Okay. So let's look at the Maz. I don't know if there's a difference, but I highlighted it for whatever reason. If any man's seed of copulation go out from him, then he shall wash all his flesh, okay, all his whole body, and shall be unclean until the evening. So, all right. So I'm not sure why I highlighted that, but it is unclean, and you have to wash it. He shall wash all his flesh. Let me just read it a little bit slower to see why did I highlight this. The man whose seed of copulation shall happen to go forth from him. Okay, says the same thing. He shall then wash his whole body. Okay, all right. I'm not sure why I highlighted that, but basically, the seed of copulation, which is semen, you have to wash yourself, and then you are unclean until evening, and the evening is the start of the next day. So it doesn't say, say that this happened during the daytime or the nighttime. Doesn't matter. It just means that you have to wait till the evening. You wash yourself and then wait till the evening, and then you'll be clean after the evening, or once the evening arrives, then you're clean. Verse 22 says vessel versus anything. So it's more specific as to what the object is in the sept. Verse 23, her versus it. Whether it be while she's on her bed. Okay, let me look at the context here. Everyone that touches any vessel on which she shall sit. Okay, it's talking about the woman, I believe, with menstruation. Whether it be while she is on her bed, on her seat, which she happened to be, which she may happen to sit upon when he touches her, he shall be unclean till evening. Versus it. Okay, sit upon me. So he's touching her. He's definitely. This is a person, another person that is not the woman touching her. He becomes unclean by touching her. Versus he is touching it. So it's focusing on the objects. You can see a clear difference. It is referring to her as a person, not an object. That's a difference there. Verse 24, uncleanness. If anyone shall lie with her, and her uncleanness, which is her menstruation, be on him. So this sounds like they're having sex, and basically she has her period. So it's the blood is on him. He will be unclean for how long? 7 days. And every bed on which he will lie on will be unclean. So you can see uh, it's not sexist. It's just saying the blood is unclean. So whatever touches it will be unclean for 7 days. Whether it's a woman, man, you got to watch out for that. And this is just a law that exists here. Now let's look at the Maz. If any man lie with her at all, and her flowers be upon him. So again, this is a big difference because this could be a possible memory verse. A lot of people read the King James Version and they read, her flowers be upon him. So what does that even mean? What does that mean? And it says, he shall be unclean 7 days. So that's consistent for both. So we can see that flowers doesn't mean literal flowers like in the thumbnail I used. It means her uncleanness, which is her menstruation. And verse 26 is a little more. It says issue of blood. That's what it is. And verse 26 says flux. Her flux shall be to her all the days of her flux, which is the issue. That's a continuous difference, not a big difference. It's more a difference of terminology. It means the same thing. Verse 28, the word esteemed is omitted. Verse 31, the whole verse is different. So let's look at that. You shall cause the children of Israel to beware of their uncleannesses. Okay, thus shall you separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness. So you can see that you're warning them, you're causing them to beware, so you're warning them. But here it just says you're separating them, you're not warning them. So they shall not die for their uncleanness. So it's just saying the same thing there. And polluting my tabernacle that is among them when they defile. Okay, so they're going to defile or pollute it. It's only the first part that's different. The first sentence here up to beware, just the beware part versus separate. You shall cause the children of Israel to beware of uncleanness versus thus shall you separate. So I'd say that's a pretty big difference. I'm going to say a significant difference. I'll just put SD. Verse 32 of copulation has been omitted. This is the law of the man who has an issue, and if one discharge seed of copulation, that's semen, versus this is the law of him that has an issue, and whose seed goes from him. So it omits the word of copulation. Could be, I don't know, people are just kind of funny. They'll say, hey, it's my seed of, oranges or some kind of plant. No, this is your seed of copulation. This is your semen, reproductive seed or fluid, and is defiled therewith. Okay. Moving on to the last verse. The whole verse is different, and this is pretty much the focus of what this video is about. It's right at the last verse. So here it is. Let's read this in both just to get this nice and clear out in the open. And this, I'm not reading the brackets, but okay, this is what it means. And this is the law in brackets. For her that has the issue of blood in her separation, okay, and of her that is sick of her flowers. So you can see there's a big difference here. Let's just read the rest of it. And as to the person who has an issue of seed, and of him that has an issue, okay, again, seed has been omitted here. In his issue, it is a law for the male. And so you can see a lot of differences here. Actually, it is a law isn't there either. It's in brackets, so it's not actually in the original. For the male and the female, and for the man who shall have lain with her, that is set apart. So set apart is different than unclean. although one can be set apart due to uncleanness. So it doesn't mean that she's holy. Uh, Set apart for a different reason, not sanctified or holy. It's set apart due to uncleanness. So that's a different setting apart. Now let's focus on the first part. It says here, for her that has the issue of blood in her separation, again referring to the set apartness due to her uncleanness, uh, and of her that is sick of her flowers. Okay, so what's the difference here? I'm going to tell you right now. This is the difference. Menstruation isn't an illness. It is not abnormal. It is not a pathology, a pathological condition. It's not something that you get sick from and you die. It's a normal bodily function for women who are in the reproductive phase of their life. So the Septuagint correctly says, for her that has the issue of blood in her separation. So that's what it is. It's just saying it bluntly. She has blood in her vagina or wherever in her reproductive area, and she needs to be separated. So that's this is the law for her that is going through this. Whereas the Masoretic text is saying, and of her that is sick. Sick of what? Of her flowers. So it's being very, it sounds so politically correct, maybe in a medieval times kind of setting, because it was written in 1611, the translation. So maybe that's how they expressed it. Oh, those are your flowers. This blood is your flowers, kind of sugarcoating, making it more palatable for people to hear and not sound too, uh, not being so forward and just blunt, just saying it's blood from your, you know what, from your vagina. Basically, it's what it is. Uh, so again, let me just say that's what the topic of this video is. I think it's a very big question. What does this mean? What did it mean? And we just explained it. I just explained it to you. It isn't flowers, and it isn't an illness. What it means is her menstruation. It means uh, it's normal. It's not abnormal. Uh, and the problem with this, the potential problem, is a lot of people who study scripture, especially the King James version and pretty much all versions that aren't the Septuagint, will look at this verse. Will say, "Oh, this is an illness, and God is discriminating, and He's calling it flowers. So it's so watered down, not watered down. It's so sugar coated and trying to be politically correct, or at least more, using nicer words, not being realistic about what it is, not looking at the situation, not just calling a spade a spade. It's kind of dancing around. Oh, this is just flowers, instead of saying, you know, telling a kid, a woman and a man when they get together, the penis goes in the vagina and he ejaculates into her, and that's, sperm goes into the egg. That's how the baby is made. But instead they go, oh yeah, yeah, babies are made when mommy and daddy hug each other, and then a stork flies over and drops a baby off in a little package with a diaper already on or something. You know what I mean? It's like that. That's what this language is doing when you don't use the actual translation, when you're not being honest with your translations. So anyway, I wouldn't say this is a massive, massive difference, but it is a pretty big difference, because a lot of people can get the wrong impression of her father and say, "Oh, he's discriminating women because menstruation is abnormal and it's an illness and she's sick of her flowers," and it just sounds very doesn't sound honest. It's not honest, and it's very it sounds discriminatory. If I didn't know any better, I didn't know the Septuagint existed, I'd go, "Oh, so she's sick. I guess it's an illness." You just accept it as, yeah, the word of God, and it's not wrong to accept it that way. But now that I know the truth, I can't accept it. It is an issue of blood, inner separation. That's what it is, and there's no discrimination. That's what it is, and it's normal. So anyway, rant over. Thank you very much for your time. Uh, you've just watched Secrets Revealed, the Holy Bible. May our Father bless you and make your way prosperous. Thank you again, and until next time. Shalom.